Right, guys, we're back once again with another episode on the Chiefs Talk YouTube, and we finally got the win. We finally got the big win that had been escaping us for the first two games of the season. And yes, we may have just beat the New York Giants, but look, like I said last week, a win is a win, especially on the road, especially when you're up against it, and especially when you just really need a win like the Chiefs did. And we got it done. And look, let's kick things off. The first half was abysmal. I mean, I think myself included, we were all sat there wherever we were, watching that first half, wondering what the hell was going on. You know, I can't think of a time, even thinking of, well, I'm having time to think here. Do I compare that to the Eagles Super Bowl game? Do I compare it to the Tampa Bowl Super game about how bad the offense played in the first half? I mean, it looked It looked for the first half like there really may be trouble in paradise. It's, I can't really remember in all my time watching the Chiefs play football, them looking that bad on the offense. It may be them two Super Bowl games. I mean, yeah, I mean, it kind of did remind me of that, to be fair, but it just felt so much more worse, probably because it wasn't a Super Bowl. That's probably what I'm trying to get at is the fact that we're playing the New York Giants, um, who are arguably one of the worst teams in the NFL at the moment. Not the Eagles in the Super Bowl, and not the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the Super Bowl. Um, God, that first half, it was just like offense was just nothing was happening whatsoever. Um, it really looked out of sorts. It really, I mean, the run game, it just brings me back, like, the run game actually got better, like, over the whole course of the game, the run game was better. Mahomes was not running around like you know, trying to make stuff happen like Superman. Um, it just makes me think of them 2 downs to Pacheco that just didn't happen, waving backwards. I had no idea what they were what he was thinking, what they were thinking. Even the one where he's like looking backwards is just incredibly like it just reminds me of like like they were in the headlights playing high school football. Like there was just no cohesion at all between the two or between that line and what they were trying to achieve on them play calls. Um, Luckily, the one where Mahomes threw it and New York pounced on it, Mahomes somehow got the ball back and saved it. Like it was just I mean, that was a crazy sequence. That was probably my peak moment in that game where my heartbeat was like, if you had a heart monitor attached to me, I would have been like, boom, 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 boom. What the heck is going on? Um, the play calling was just abysmal, very bad. There was not a lot, really happening. There was, God, I even think I remember saying this, just laughing about it. Mahomes and Kelsey had two really bad connections. Never mind Pacheco and Mahomes. The one where he just stood there and it looked like Mahomes didn't want to throw to him, and it was like a last resort, like a real. All his reads were gone, whatever they're called up in that play. And Kelsey just stood there like, "Give me the ball." And Mahomes threw it to him last minute, and he was nowhere near. And I was joking around with one of my friends, Casey Kane, saying, "But during the game, me and him could have thrown that to each other. We could have made that play. That's how out of sorts they were." I was like, "We didn't play football, and we could have done this. So what the hell's going on?" And then the one where Kelsey ran the route on the sideline, it was just like I don't even know if he could have got away with that in his prime. 2020, 2021, 2022, when he was ripping up defenses, week in, week out. But it just felt like a really odd play. But then it also felt like a lack of effort, kind of from his behalf, and the fact that and this is only a minor picking, but it's like he could have at least played the ball and maybe drew a flag. But whoever drew that play up, it was this is interesting thinking. You've got a load of wide receivers available to you. Draw up for one of them guys. Don't put the pressure on Kelsey. Um, And the whole play calling throughout the first half was just, yeah, shocking. Um, and then it culminated with Kelsey and Andy Reid going out on the sideline, which I actually enjoyed seeing Andy Reid badging back. Because to be fair, like everyone really freaks out when they see this happen. Like, and they forget, like, when Trav came into the league, he was a hothead already. Like, he was a legit hothead. I always think back to the time when he pulled the flag out of his pocket. Well, it was like the towel, but he was acting like it was a flag. And he's always been a hothead. There's been times for any newbies. There's been times in camp every year where Kelsey's got into fights every single training camp in the summer without fail. Like it's just a normal thing. We've seen him get into it with Reed before. Didn't really take much stock out of that. I would say like when he did the headbutt to Joanne the other week to wake him up, and his confrontations with Andy Reid on the sideline. If you're going to do that, you have to be able to back up your own game as well. That's all I'd say on that. There's nothing wrong with him being annoyed at how the team are playing and want it to be better because he is the leader in the locker room. But ultimately, your own game has to back that up. But maybe that kicks it. People were saying straight away, and you could have thought that as a Chiefs fan. Maybe that kicked them up the butt, so to speak, because they went at half time, and I was thinking, right, if they come out now and it's not better, we're in big trouble because we're not playing. Yeah, we're playing phenomenal front D line, but the rest of the Giants team was defensive unit was it's not very good. So you should be putting up points in them. There's no excuse. I said this without Rice and Worthy, you should be beating the Giants. Like, there's no excuse. Um, so they came out, and it was like there was a number of things that could have happened. They either all went crazy at each other in the locker room. Mahomes, lost his head. Whatever happened, something happened. Andy Reid lost his head. Travis Kelsey carried on, and everyone woke up. They either or they changed the play calls or the play caller. Now there's always this big, discussion in Chiefs Kingdom. Who calls the plays? Is it Matt Nagy? You know, is it Andy Reid? And everyone says no, it's Andy Reid. You know that. No, it's Matt Nagy. Get him out of the team. He's horrible. And like whichever way you see it, whoever has been calling the plays, whoever called the plays in that first half, if this is what changed, they don't need to be calling them again because there was just a series of really dull football that wasn't working for this particular team. Um, so something drastically changed at the half, and for the better. And they came out and they got stuff done. They looked a lot better. They actually took I really loved how they took the deep shot with Tyquan Thornton twice back to back. Now that shows intent, and that shows that Mahomes is starting to have that get on that. They're getting on that level with each other. So you go one time and you're like, oh wow, you really should have. I mean, that was an amazing catch, but he just didn't haul it in. If you remember the first one, which could have been a touchdown, he just didn't quite have it. And then immediately after, he went straight back to him and hit it. And I just got so pumped up for that. It was like they could have just given up then and gone back to their own ways. Let's go for check down passes. Let's just get up the field nice and slow. But they didn't. They went straight back to him, and that gives me hope for the rest of the season. That they can rely on him. And I always knew they could. I've been a big advocate of Tyquan Thornton ever since he stepped in the building. I thought like his speed, his length, his height was everything that the Chiefs needed for a good while. So I was really pumped to see that. And then we got, a touchdown straight after. Very good, very good. The run game was much better. The run game was much better this week. Kareem and Pacheco, they both got involved. I think Pacheco had 10 carries for 45 yards, so 4.5 yards per carry, which is much, 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 much better than what he did the previous week. As you remember, it was 2.2 yards per carry. So there was a sparked improvement aside from his errors. Whatever was going on there, I'd really love to know, but hopefully never again. But missed the field goal again. And it's I said last week it's not concerning yet, but does it get concerning? Because every week he's missed a kick, and you're just thinking, is it an injury? Is it a technique? Is his head not in the game properly? Is he just going through a funk? We've seen him go through a funk before, and he gets over it. So it remains to be seen. I mean, I guess it is a concern because we've won a ton of games, especially tight games against really good teams by a field goal, or he's got us level with a field goal. And if it comes down to that, you need to be able to rely on him. It's kind of weird at the moment in the NFL. A lot of kickers are missing kicks. Um, you know, the guy in San Francisco got cut, and they've got a new guy, and I think he missed his first one. And now he's kicking pine, but and Young Wei Koo, he missed a bunch for the Falcons. He got cut, and their new guy, I think, and for the Falcons, he missed a few, and then various other guys are missing kicks. So it's a bit of an odd time, but maybe maybe it's a kickers thing. Who knows? But it's one to keep an eye on anyway. And then let's talk about the defense. Marked improvements again. I mean, you have to shout out straight away the secondary. Secondary was phenomenal. Secondary was really phenomenal. Jalen Watson looks back to his old self. Mr. CB2. I mean, look, Russ was throwing air balls in the air. Russ was just throwing Hail Marys and thinking that he could, Malik Neighbors, as good as he is, was going to, you know, rip it up, torch this Chiefs secondary. The Chiefs secondary. A lot of people they seriously had it out for the Chiefs corner room. The secondary as a whole has questions. You may have a distinct lack of a leader in them because Justin Reed left, and we've all been clamoring for maybe another safety, and that was highlighted in the week one game. They got torn. The whole secondary got torn apart. Safety room looked really bad. But the corners against the Giants, they balled out, man. Let's not get it twisted. Jalen Watson was interception. He absolutely, him and Trent locked up Malik Neighbors. Whoever was on him locked. They locked up. They locked the whole. That room up. They locked them. Wandale Robinson's been balling out for the Giants, and he got locked. And they're going down this route again. The last two games against what we're right the week one off because let's just say they were jet lagged and whatever else. But the last two games, your AJ Browns, your Devontae Smith, apart from that one deep air ball that Trent gave up, they've really kept them to barely anything. And that's a credit to him. AJ Brown, he had 5 catches for 27 yards. Malik Neighbors had 2 catches for 13 yards, I think. I mean, it's incredible numbers, For a slept on secondary, it's incredible. And you even had the young rook, Noah Williams, once again balling out. I mean, he just looks like an absolute, gem gem of a find in that draft. I mean, I remember there was some really stats coming out about him when we first drafted him. Like the numbers he was putting up in college were like, wow, these jump out at you as a guy he's a typical Brett Veach cornerback pick. And he's living up to the hype already. His snap counts increased. He's he's really coming into himself. And then you've got Chris Rowland Wallace, who's kind of going into that safety. They played him a bit in CB. He's playing that safety role a bit, and he got an int, and he loves an interception. That kid, and I was really big on him last season. He was, he was undrafted, but it's funny is when when you have a page like that has a lot of followers, it's cool and it's fun. You have a lot of these guys you pick up, whether they're mid round, late round draft picks, undrafted, coming for a camp tryout and make the team. They always have a really big fan base of friends and family that root for them non-stop. And there was Chris Rowland Wallace is one guy that started me last season. Every time we did something, my comments and shares on his posts were always, you know, this guy's it, blah 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 blah. And then you get accustomed to it and you think, well, out of all these guys that do this, there's always a good one or two that actually are as good as what their friends and family saying from. So I couldn't be more than happier for him that he's getting these big opportunities. And when you watch him, he is a good player. He was a great find UDFA. I love seeing him out on the field. I do. And collectively, that corner room is really starting to shine. And you've still got Christian Fulton, who's we've been disappointed with his injury history coming into camp, coming into preseason. He's obviously hurt again, but as of right now, recording this, him and Mike Danner had limited practices today, so things are looking up. But yeah, corner room, shout them out. I mean, I believe Roland Wallace and Noel Williams are PFF's first and third top graded defensive backs after 3 weeks, which is crazy when you consider the stigma that was around the corner room. They're balling out, you know, and then you got the stud, you got top five cornerback in the NFL, Trent McDuffie there holding things down as well. So lots of good stuff to say. And then look, we go back to the D line. Everyone's been worrying about. Go straight into the D line. Chris Jones finally got a sack, and now you just hope. I said last week once Norman Locke got one on Hurts, and he had that big thudding, spear. Hopefully, this kick gives him a kick. Gives him a spur on. If the Rook can do it, the rest of us can do it. And there you go. Chris Jones was getting free, and so he should against it's the Giants. So he should be sacking Russ. But George Karlaftis had a ton of pressures. I think he's ranking up there in putting the numbers up on the pressures. Just needs to finish on with some sacks, but that's marked improvement. And I think Omar Norman Lott, amongst rookies, he has the third highest pressures in the NFL. Don't quote me on that, but I'll post it on the video. So things are looking up for the D line. And then when you go into, I just really want to talk about the Ravens game. Not too long, but I've got some thoughts on that. They had for a while it was a shootout with the Lions. A tough game. I really rate the Lions. I really believe the Lions would have got to the Super Bowl last year if they had the defense, and they were just, imagine KC playing without Chris Jones, and they had DBs out, linebackers. I think they had, as well as Hutch, I think they had another one or two defensive linemen out. I think they would have got there. I think they would have beat the Eagles. I think they would have beat whoever they lost to the Commanders. I think whoever they lost to, they would have beat them. If you ask me who I was concerned about coming to Arrowhead, it's the Detroit Lions. Because they score a lot of points and the defense actually looks decent. I think they've still got some injuries, but it actually looks decent. But when you talk about the Ravens, yeah, they're still a powerhouse. They were the Super Bowl, I believe they were the Super Bowl favorites going to the season. Or maybe there's one behind Philly and then it changed. But they've got fumble issues with Derrick Henry's uncharacteristically fumbling. They couldn't get it done. The defense is depleted. Now, the defense is definitely depleted. They have two players out. One guy is defensive end, I think. He's out for the foreseeable. He's been ruled out of Sunday's game, which is massive for us. Massive for Kingsley and Simmons going against a depleted. And I don't have to say, you want to beat the teams the best, but we're not going to have our team at our best. So it is what it is. It's football at the end of the day. People get injuries. But it's not even about the defense. It's about, I look at the Ravens and I just think we can beat them. We beat them last season, all by a toe tap. That wasn't in. But we're the Kansas City Chiefs and we're playing at home. Of course we can beat these teams. We barely lost to the Eagles, who were the Super Bowl champions, and 3-0, and they haven't lost in 18, 19 games. So on that day we can beat any team. I'm confident. I'm feeling confident. And I know once again this week, the analysts aren't feeling confident. But I think everyone but one guy is picking against the Chiefs. And so what? We've been there before. Who cares? I fancy us against the Ravens. I just think Lamar he'll get free, he'll get opportunities, but I back the corners in the secondary to lock down Zay Flowers and Bateman had a bit of success against the Lions, so they've got to be wary of that. The tight end's interesting because Mark Andrews had a really good game by his standards. He looks like he's back to himself, and then they may be getting Isaiah Likely back, but I back the secondary and the linebackers to have that shored up. It's just they need to get to Lamar. They need to stop the run. And I think this week, actually, they did struggle again against the run, the defense a little bit. Yes, Cam Scatterboo, he did have a lot of rushing. He's a nice little aggressive running back. God, I wish we would have picked him up in the draft. He would have fit in great in KC, but we were susceptible against the run again. Everyone's got their own opinions on that. They just need to get better. They did it against Barkley. They just need to get. It's Derrick Henry's coming to town. They always play a really good game against Derrick Henry, though, so I'm confident. You just have to watch Lamar, but then I look at us and I think you go back to that depleted defense, and you just think the offense in that second half of the game against the Giants, that was like, I haven't seen that in a while. That was like vintage Chiefs. And it gets me back to my point I was saying earlier about what we're calling different plays. And I kind of think Patrick might have been calling his own stuff. I mean, this is an indication of he was calling his own plays, but he was calling out a lot of stuff that defenses were showing him and the defense was showing him in the second half that he was calling nothing in the first half. It's really hard in that focal in a long time. And I really think he was just taking it into his own, just like, well, I know what we can do to win. And they were just letting him have a bit of freedom with it. And they were calling different stuff. But based on that second half showing, I really believe we can stick it to the Ravens. Um, I just think get the running game going more. The running game was much better against the Giants, and look what happened. We won a game, so it seems to be marginally improved. You make them. Speaking about the last 3 episodes now. You make them adjustments and the marginal errors, and you come out much better for it. You take them deep shots. We're going to have Xavier Worthy back. I know he missed that game. I know he put some practices in. It was too early to risk him, but he's had the full practice as of today. Jalen Rose had the full practice as of today. I don't think they were ever going to risk Rose last week unless they really needed him, even though he's had the full practice last week. But now it's the Ravens. It's at home. To me, it's a must-win. People say it's not a must-win, but to me, the way the Chargers have started, I think, yeah, you've got to win. And this is where you roll out the guys. You've got Worthy back. You've got, until Rice is back, you've got your wide receiver one. You've got Tyquan Thornton making plays. You've still got Hollywood Brown making plays. You've still got Juju there. You've still got Kelsey. They're getting there. And you might see a bit of Jalen Rose. So I have high hopes for the Ravens game. I just feel like this is going to be the turning point in the season. I don't think last week was because it's a routine. It should be a routine win. Yes, it looked horrible in the first half, but let's pray we're over that part. But this is the turning point. It's where we turn our season around. And look, even if we get to 3-3, by the time Rice is back, that's a success for me. Even 2-4 is not the end of the world. Yes, I don't want 2-4. I don't want to lose to the Ravens. I don't think we will lose to the Ravens. But 3-3 by the time Rice is back for the Raiders game, and you're kicking on because you just need to get over this hurdle because you're playing. We played the Chargers, the Eagles, tough. Giants, whatever. Ravens, tough. Jags away. I mean, Jags on the road. You're winning that game. You're winning it. Then the Lions. Then you've got the Commanders in there. Then you got the Raiders. Then you got the Bills. I think week 9 before the bye. But then once you get over that big block and Rice is accustomed back, climatized back into the offense again. Worthy's healthier. He's getting healthier every week. You get to the bye. Fingers crossed you get there with no injuries. And you come out and you've got a fairly good run. So if you build up, if you just keep it, if the Chiefs keep it reasonable with the record, they've got more. Look, the Chiefs are making the playoffs. I'm not disputing that. I just think, I even think it's early to be getting carried away with saying the Chargers are going to win the AFC West because the Chargers always charge it every single year. Yeah, they look decent, but come on, this week we're going into week 4. They're 3-0, but there's a long way to go. A very, very long way to go. Even for the Bills or a team, getting the number 1 seed, it's not a foregone conclusion. Yes, we lose to the Bills every regular season more than likely, and then beat them in the playoffs. So you expect, we're going to lose to them, but it's still wide open. You get that win over the Ravens, and you've knocked off, a contender for the number 1 seed, and a team you're likely going to see again in the playoffs. I mean, one of these teams is going to leave that game Sunday 1-3, but they're still going to make the playoffs. I still think the Ravens and the Chiefs both make the playoffs at this point. But tell you what, in my honest opinion, it's not going to be the Kansas City Chiefs that leave 1-3.